KOAT, Action 7 News live at 10. Coverage you can count on.
New details tonight in a tragedy in northern New Mexico. 5 people killed in a helicopter crash near Raton. 6 people were on board, and one of those victims was a big political figure overseas.
We have team coverage tonight as we try to figure out how it happened, plus who the victims are. We're going to start with the desperate cries for help from the only survivor.
Action 7 News reporter David Carl uncovered the 911 calls you'll hear only on 7. But a word of caution to our viewers. What you're about to hear is disturbing.
Yeah, that first call came in here to the Raton Police Department before 6 o'clock on Wednesday. It was from the crash's only survivor, and you hear Andrea Cobb screaming for her life.
Ma'am, stop yelling. Tell me where you're at.
I'm watching my family burn in a fire.
5 lives gone. 3 of them instantly as a helicopter goes down near Raton.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. There's a big fire. I'm covered again.
Audra Cobb, Jamie Coleman Dodd, and Roy Bennett survived the initial crash. All 3 call 911.
So you're east of Raton?
Yeah. There's probably 3 dead. And there's 3 seriously wounded.
A pilot, co-pilot, and 4 passengers were flying toward the Emery Gap Ranch near Folsom, New Mexico. Police don't know what caused the crash, but the helicopter went down on a mesa near Raton.
The fire was so big you couldn't tell where the helicopter was.
Bridger Pedrini is a rancher in the area. He was the first on scene, leading police to the crash site. Pedrini says Bennett was injured but lucid when he arrived. But things quickly took a turn for the worse.
I was just kind of running back and forth, and he got to the point he started telling me that he felt like he was drowning.
Dodd and Bennett died before the end of the night, bringing the total death count to 5.
Are you there, 911? 911, are you there?
Cobb did suffer multiple broken bones, but she is expected to survive. Reporting in Raton, David Carl, KOAT Action 7 News.
The helicopter went down about 10 to 15 miles east of Raton on a ranch. We know it was a mountainous region near Green Mountain. Before that, the passengers had flown from Houston to Raton and then boarded the helicopter. They were then flying to Folsom. Well, Sky 7 was over the wreckage for hours today. Christine Pay is here to tell us what our pilot thinks about the crash.
Yeah, Sky 7 pilot Neil Lawson has been flying helicopters for 25 years. We can safely say he is an expert, and tonight his observations on this deadly crash are striking.
The first thing I noticed was that large burned area.
The 1 mile diameter of the burn scar wasn't the only thing Sky 7 pilot Neil Lawson noticed.
It was obvious that while part of the tail survived recognizably, the main cabin part here, where all the people were, was completely burned out.
As federal officials look into what caused the helicopter to go down, Lawson has his own observations.
On this side, we have the main rotor of the helicopter, which is normally here on top. We have several parts, doors. The tail rotor of the helicopter was over here. So various parts of the aircraft fell off as it was skidding down.
Those clear skid marks near the crash site offering some clues.
What I believe happened was that the aircraft hit the side of a slope. It probably wasn't a real steep slope, but it was a gentle rise, and the aircraft hit and then slid because it was flying at full speed, 150, 170 miles an hour.
The UH-1 Huey crashed sometime before 6 p.m., making us wonder if flying in the dark played a role.
If that's the case in this aircraft, that may not be a factor in this particular accident. On the other hand, if they were flying just under visual rules, that could be a problem.
Lawson says many helicopters do have black boxes, but it is still uncertain if this one did. Christine Pay, KOAT Action 7 News.
And one of our first questions in the aftermath, what were flying conditions like at the time of the crash? We go to Joe Diaz for a closer look.
Okay, let's give you a comparison contrast. First of all, here's the way the satellite map looks right now. You can pick up some high clouds throughout much of New Mexico. That's the current one. Now look, we're going to go back in time, Wednesday, 6 o'clock at the time of the crash. Notice that the satellite map is clear throughout all of the region, and the radar is laid on this composite as well. If we saw some green, that'd mean rain. We saw some white, that would be snow, but this is all clear. Now, it was about 10 to 15 miles to the east of Raton. You can see this hilly, remote area that they're talking about. So the weather conditions at the time of the crash, clear skies, temperature above freezing, 34, winds not bad, northeast, 12 miles an hour, and the visibility good. So we don't know what brought the aircraft down, but weather is likely not a cause.
6 people were on board the helicopter. 57-year-old Jamie Dodd from Trinidad, Colorado was the pilot, and 67-year-old Paul Cobb from Texas was the co-pilot. Now, the 4 passengers are 61-year-old Charles Bennett from Texas, 60-year-old Roy Bennett, 55-year-old Heather Bennett, his wife, and the only survivor is 39-year-old Andra Cobb.
The Andra is still alive, but she's injured, and she's, in fact, she's boarding a plane now, a private jet, to come back to Houston to be treated.
That's Ross Eliason, who knows Andra very well. As for Roy Bennett and his wife Heather, Eliason didn't know them well, but Bennett was one of the leaders of Zimbabwe's opposition party. He actually served time in prison and was exiled under former Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe. While Eliason, seen here on the left, is praying for Andra's full recovery, he is mourning the loss of his friends Jamie Dodd, Paul Cobb, and Charles Burnett. That's Cobb on the right.
It's just overwhelming, and we're just doing the best we can to cope with it right now.
This is a look at the type of helicopter involved in the crash. It's typically used in the military, but this one was privately owned. The model was first introduced in 1959 and is famous for its use during the Vietnam War.
This is the 3rd reported crash in New Mexico this week. The first happened Tuesday night near Santa Fe. That crash involved a small plane. The pilot called 911 when it went down near the Rancho San Marcos subdivision off State Road 14. He was found conscious, but he was taken to St. Vincent Hospital for leg, back, and arm injuries. There was bad weather at the time. Yesterday, there was a report of a downed aircraft in Cibola County, south of Gallup. New Mexico State Police say someone called 911 after seeing a low-flying plane, but crews were never able to find any signs of that plane.
We will still follow this story and bring you the latest updates on air and online, and make sure you download the KOAT app to get alerts anytime we get details.
Any parent will be concerned to hear this next story. An Albuquerque 5th grader handing out gummy bears containing marijuana to other students at school. Tonight, just how dangerous this is and who should be held responsible. A 9-year-old thought it was just some candy she found at her house, but this was the kind she should never have had access to. It was edible medical marijuana candy, and the student handed it out to classmates at the Albuquerque School of Excellence. According to the school's dean of elementary students, 5 kids shared a box of the gummies that looked just like these last week. The dean tells Action 7 News some of the kids became, quote, giggly, while others got sick. Not surprising, considering Dr. Ramos says these gummies can be a lot more powerful than plain marijuana.
Number one is you have to keep them away from children. That means that you treat them just as you would a gun. The concentration of these edibles can be very high, sometimes 5 or 6 times the normal amount that you might get in other forms of marijuana. So it's very important to keep these away from children.
It's still unclear whether these gummies were purchased in New Mexico, making it difficult to know exactly what these kids ingested.
There are so many variations of gummies that are out on the market now that are from out of state. We really don't know.
One parent we spoke with perhaps sums it up best.
Well, there's no way to stop kids really from sharing, especially food items, that kind of thing. So I think the main issue lies, of course, with the parents. You got to keep that away from them.
The 5th grader was suspended because the school has a policy against students sharing food from home because of a possible allergic reaction. Upsetting for anybody to hear.
I mean, amazing the things that you have to worry about. I know you have to worry about these for a while now, but it just seems like really you have to have that conversation, but you do.
Absolutely, and unknowingly, I mean, the student finds them at home, and they look like, truly like what we buy at the store.
Yeah,
they really do. I mean, they're meant to in a way, and then, but for kids, it looks like it does, and then kids getting sick, it's serious stuff. Earlier tonight, friends and family gathered to remember a man who was shot and killed 3 years ago. Angelo Martinez was killed in a Walmart parking lot on Coors and I-40 in 2015. They think he was fighting with another man at the time, but no one is in custody. Tonight, loved ones held a memorial and released balloons in Martinez's honor, and they're hoping someone makes a break in the case.
Give me justice and closure, please. I want help with this case to be closed. I want these people who were involved to be step forward or to just be arrested. I want them to serve time.
Last week, police asked for help with the case and posted surveillance video to the Crime Stoppers Facebook page. If you have information, call police.
The House has passed a bill to keep the government running for a few more weeks, but it still needs to get through the Senate. If it doesn't pass and a shutdown happens, it could affect our national parks. Byron Morton explains.
As a New Mexican myself, I love our state's incredible natural beauty. It's why many of us choose to call this home. But now some of it is being threatened to be taken away by a government shutdown. And that's got a lot of you talking.
Oh, very bad.
It's just a tragedy. That's a bad thing.
But there is some hope. At least that's what the New Mexico Department of Tourism says. In a statement to KOAT7, they said the Department of Interior is working on a plan that will allow New Mexico's 14 national parks and monuments to remain open wherever possible to visitors in the case of a government shutdown, though unstaffed, which is good news for some.
Take the chance to experience everything here, like everything that New Mexico has to offer.
The New Mexico Department of Tourism also says all 34 state parks will remain open regardless of a federal government shutdown. Byra Morton, KOAT, Action 7 News.
In Washington, the battle over the budget is intensifying ahead of tomorrow's deadline. ABC's Kenneth Moten has the latest on House Republicans' proposal from Washington.
Late Thursday evening, the House passed a short-term GOP measure to keep the government open. But with a fix for the Dreamers not included, the bill is in trouble in the Senate.
The DACA issue does not face urgent deadlines until March. Our deadline to fund the government is tomorrow.
President Trump made a trip to the Pentagon, a possible government shutdown just hours away. Trump later toured a factory in Pennsylvania touting the new tax law.
I really believe the Democrats want a shutdown to get off the subject of the tax cuts because they've worked so well.
The Democrats hitting back on Capitol Hill with the reminder that the Republicans are in charge.
Because the Republicans, both in the Senate, the House, and the White House, can't get their act together.
The main sticking points, immigration, including a fix for the Dreamers and Trump's southern border wall. Also hanging in the balance, the Children's Health Insurance Program for 9 million kids.
I think it's unconscionable that Democrats would walk away from CHIP, from funding our military, for something that is not a deadline.
GOP leaders were hoping to entice Democrats to vote on the 30-day measure to fund the government by including CHIP funding.
This is like giving you a bowl of doggy do, put a cherry on top and call it a chocolate sundae. This is nothing.
Trump tweeted this morning CHIP should be a part of a long-term solution, not a short-term extension, but the White House clarified, saying Trump supports the one-month funding measure, which doesn't appear to have the votes in the Senate to pass. Kenneth Moten, ABC News, Washington.
It has been a controversial project from the start with setback after setback. Today, it has been a controversial project from the start with setback after setback. Today, finally a breakthrough with the company making the buses for the Albuquerque Rapid Transit Project. Target 7 finds out what it means for its future.
Hundreds of cities trying to bring Amazon's second headquarters home. We'll tell you which ones are still in the running and where the Duke City stands.
Plus, Meow Wolf is growing again. We're going to tell you where the exhibit is heading now.
You're watching KOAT Action 7 News live at 10.
A breakthrough meeting today with the company making the ART buses. Target 7 was the first to uncover design and mechanical issues that delayed the project's launch.
And tonight, Megan Cruz sat down with one of the key people in the bus company after he met with the city.
That's right, guys. I sat down with BYD's senior vice president this afternoon. He flew in from California to tackle the city's list of complaints about our buses.
Remember when the city said this?
Almost every single bus has a list of about 20 to 25, in some cases up to 30 individual items that range from minor things to very significant structural things.
Well, that news conference last week took the bus company by surprise.
We're a little surprised at how it was presented versus an opportunity to sit down first.
That opportunity came today.
City officials this morning met with a team from BYD, who then met with us. Their impression of the meeting.
And I don't know that the new administration really understood how fully committed we were to getting these issues resolved, and we were working on them already.
For example, BYD says they've fixed the problematic part that's kept a bus from passing a durability test, which is required for the city to get federal funding for this project. The company hopes to retake that test in 2 weeks. It says it will retrofit all the buses the city already has with the improved part. As for the battery chargers, those should be up and running soon too.
Hopefully in about 10 days we'll have all the certifications in place and the whole issue will be done with.
The city today also asked about battery life. Officials say they were told a full charge would last 275 miles, but in their testing,
The range was only about 200 miles.
BYD today stands by their 275-mile estimate.
I also asked the company when we'd get our remaining buses. We were supposed to get all 20 in October, but so far we only have 10. BYD says it will give the city a definitive deadline within a few days. For Target 7, I'm Megan Cruz.
We're following breaking news in Utah. An interstate is shut down after a tanker explosion and fire. Look at that video. The flames were caught on traffic cameras. Crews are still working to get the scene cleared. It's not clear what caused the explosion or if anyone's hurt. The freeway could remain closed for hours. A Bernalillo County deputy shot himself in the leg during training today. It happened at a shooting range west of the city. When the deputy went to holster his gun, it fired and hit his thigh. He was checked at the scene and cleared to go back on duty. The department is doing an internal investigation, which is standard.
The legislative session is picking up in Santa Fe. Today, the House passed its first bill. Lawmakers voted unanimously to allow nurses to continue practicing here and 27 other states without additional requirements. The Senate passed it yesterday, and the governor signed it into law today. Right now, lawmakers are also considering a 10% pay increase for all elected leaders in the state. And we're keeping an eye on what makes it through the legislature. So far, 2 have passed in the House, 2 bills and 1 in the Senate. We'll keep you updated.
The number of flu cases in New Mexico has tripled since last year. 7 New Mexicans have also died, and experts do not expect the illness to peak for another week or 2. Nationwide, 20 children have died, but it's also hitting healthy adults particularly hard. We asked our medical expert just how bad it is.
It is definitely a bigger flu season, and you can still get a flu shot, and if you think that's a waste of time, you'd be wrong. The flu can be deadly. There have been a number of deaths in people who are even healthy. So it means that you want to use hand sanitizer. You want to make sure that you don't go out if you have the flu. And I think I wouldn't hang around with people with flu.
Dr. Rim also says it is not too late to get a flu shot.
It's something police remind us about every winter. Don't warm up your car and leave it running, but it keeps happening, and thieves keep stealing those cars. This morning alone, APD tweeted that 5 were stolen this way. They also want to warn you, if it is stolen, they have a hard time getting it back for you. Amazon has announced the cities it's considering for its second headquarters, and unfortunately, that does not include Albuquerque. Today, the e-commerce giant narrowed the list from more than 200 cities to just 20. That includes places like New York, Atlanta, and Boston. All of the contenders are east of the Mississippi River, with the exception of LA, Denver, Dallas, and Austin.
So no homecoming for Jeff Bezos, I guess.
I guess not. Hey, we got Facebook, and they're just, trying to do even more here. So we got that. It's okay. Yeah. We're moving on now.
Yeah. Well, despite that bad news, some good news for an attraction in Santa Fe. Meow Wolf is expanding again. Just 2 weeks ago, the Art Collective announced an expansion in Denver. This time it's heading to Las Vegas, Nevada. Meow Wolf says the destination is called Area 15, not 51, but 15. It's scheduled to open in late 2019. It will be similar to the one in Santa Fe with art installations, workshops, and a bar.
Now here's Joe with your live Super Doppler 7 forecast.
Well, noticeably milder today, and tomorrow's going to be one of the best days of the next several, so take advantage of it as you can. Above normal temperatures in the afternoon, that's how you're going to start your Friday night. But rain and snow showers Saturday night around Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, and Santa Fe, more to the north and west across the higher terrain. And wind and cold, unfortunately, increase on Sunday. So we're going to start off cold, 58. That's about 10 degrees or so above normal, all right? Now, as we get into Saturday, for most of us, the first half of the day will be okay, all right? As we get into the afternoon, look at the snow showers develop around Farmington, Gallup, on into the Four Corners area around Farmington, on into Durango, and you see Santa Fe and Taos kind of in the dry air, but the winds will start to pick up during the afternoon, and then Saturday night into Sunday, those rain-snow mixes coming up. In about 10 minutes, I'm going to give you a time element on that. However, what we're looking at, as we look at Sunday, that snow will start to pull out of the mountains, okay? But it's going to leave behind some very cold northwest winds. Temperatures in the 30s and 40s throughout much of the northern half of New Mexico. Stronger winds throughout southern parts of the state. So I think that wind chills on Sunday for a time could be in the teens and 20s over much of the northern half of the state. We have that cold start on the day on Monday. We get back into the 50s for Tuesday and Wednesday. Winds look to be back on the increase from yet another system as we approach the upcoming weekend. But as we look at tomorrow afternoon, it's going to be absolutely delightful. As we look at the weekend, the first half of Saturday looks fine. The winds start to come up a bit in the afternoon, but really as you get into a Saturday night, rain changing to snow showers, even around the Albuquerque area. If we get measurable snow, it will be the 3rd latest snow on record. But the brunt is going to fall across the higher terrain throughout the Northwest.
All right, maybe just a little bit though.
Well, speaking of snow, planning to ski this weekend, we're going to have a look at the snow totals.
Well, that's why it's so important for you to get that yearly physical exam.